All right, here we are recording. I hope everybody is doing as well as they can be today. And all right, so this is the quarterly November meeting of the Vermont ILL Roundtable. Thanks everybody for attending today, everybody who could be here. We will be recording and we will be posting afterwards. So if anybody has to, as usual, has to cut out for anything, please feel free. Also, that means if you're that we are recording, so anything you say will end up on the recording. All right, so I think we are starting with the main agenda item is looking at the changes to the ALA. Yeah, words escape me here. The ALA National ILL Code. So I think we could use a couple of different approaches for doing this. We can either just sort of march through it, which might be the easiest way, or we can just do it scattershot if people have suggestions. Does anybody have a preference for approaches for how we work through this? Or sorry, is there actually anything anyone wants to bring up ahead of time? We can talk about stuff afterwards, but is there anything momentous, besides the obvious, that anybody wants to jump in before we lead into the changes? Okay, well, if you change your mind, shout at any point. But otherwise, I think, I guess we'll just march through this, if this is okay with folks, and we'll see where changes they're making are applicable to our code and where we might need to make a change. So, all right. So I am working off of my list of the changes, which is just sort of an extended version of the ALA list of changes. If you spot anything else that I didn't see, absolutely bring that up. Okay. So first change is, sure, you know what? I'm going to get theirs as well because that's the official one. Sorry, in the wrong spot again. Summary changes. Okay, so first off, first change they have is in section 1.2, which is they have, I'll read it actually aloud because it's a little bit confusing. They have added ebooks as a reference. Yes, sorry. Okay, good question, Kelly Johnson. Yes, April has departed the department, has moved to a different position elsewhere in the state of Vermont. So we are all very sad to have her not here. And so in the interim, we are all kind of collectively trying to take on her many various tasks. And the position has just been posted. I should mention that, sorry. April's position just went up online. The the application window is open right now. So please, if anybody is interested in the position or knows someone who might be interested in the position, please feel free to apply. And if you have questions about it, you can get in touch with us and I'll pass you on to the correct person on that. But yes, sorry, good question. I should open with that. And yes, April has departed the department, and we are all collectively very sad at that. And we'll do our best to keep you up with the stuff. Okay, jumping back. ALL, ILL changes. I agree 100%, Eric. The first one is that they have added ebooks to the list of non-returnable items. So what their language is they say online books, i.e. ebooks, may be considered returnable or non-returnable depending on the license terms related to delivery. That is what they added. Was not sure that whether this was going to be relevant or not to, well, you know what? I'm sorry. I don't know why I have an opinion in this because you guys know 1,000% more about our code than I do because you were involved in making it. Any thoughts on section 1.2 adding ebooks as a returnable or non-returnable item and whether that is something that needs to be addressed in the Vermont code? See, Eric, feel free to unmute yourself or what have you.
Hello. Can you all hear me? Okay.
Yes, yep.
Is that something that we're even able to do using our current systems?
So that's the thing. In in my and people can correct me if that's not correct, but my sense is it's uh somewhere between complicated and impossible in many cases. There are there I think I don't have the background here, but my suspicion is that they are addressing the non-returnables as a not the sort of lendable ebook model, but more like
Yeah.
a DRM free. But um, I I I am not aware of that being a situation. None of certainly we have Palace through the state. There would not be any mechanism to do that. We have
Yeah.
we have ebooks. We have reference ebooks through Gale, and they are explicitly we're not allowed to do that. Though anybody in the state could use them, we couldn't send them anywhere else through
Right.
ILL. Um, yeah, I don't know that this is going to have a. I don't know who this has a big impact on, but I don't know that it has any impact on us. But if anybody else have thoughts on the ebook component, um, or have you successfully ever lent or received an ebook? I don't believe that we have really. Um, yeah, Noreen says, sorry, I should be reading comments out loud. I apologize. Noreen says no. Yeah, that matches up with my line. So I don't know that we need to get, we can try. Heike asks, can we clarify what ebook means in this context? Um, let's see. Hold on. Let me pull up what they are saying. Well, they don't define it really. They say online books, i.e. ebooks. So I am thinking that I'm going to guess that they mean, I mean, actually, that's a great question because is a PDF an ebook in this context? Is something else like that an ebook? I'm not totally sure. Um, I mean, I usually am thinking of what you would be getting through from like Overdrive, uh, Palace, or buying from Amazon. And so something in one of those sort of specific ebook formats. But I'm not sure that um, yeah, I don't know that I see a lot of application for that at this point here in Vermont, barring a change in, I guess, the ebook market probably. Um, I think we'll run through these maybe first, and then we won't like necessarily need to make any hard and fast decisions, and maybe we don't want to make any decisions at all today. We're not under any time constraints at all, but I think we'll run through it, and then we can see where we're at and whether we want to nail anything down today. Think about it for later. But feel free to, if you think of something later, you're like, oh, like 10 minutes from now, you say ebooks. Yes, I have an idea. Feel free to jump in 100%. Okay. All right. So next one. And there are a few of these in here. This is 1.3. And it clarifies, there's a number of additions about accessible content. So 1.3 adds, in this code, accessible means an alternative format that gives a person with disabilities access to a work as feasibly and comfortably as a person without such disability. And again, there are a few of these in here that are just indicating that that's what they mean by accessible, and that there are sometimes different rules around accessible content. For example, like Able Library has that there's a certain amount of freedom that is not necessarily always there with non-accessible content. So they at 1.3 they're just clarifying what they mean by accessible. Then they go on to describe how copyright applies to accessibility and that um, uh, duh, duh, duh. Okay, I'll read it. You know what? Section 121 of the Chaffee Amendment of the U.S. Copyright Law, Title 17, stipulates that authorized entities, including libraries, can provide reproductions of in-copyright works in alternative formats that allow eligible persons to read such printed works to substantially the same degree as a person without an impairment or a disability. And again, there are a few more of these in here. Um, so uh, again, not 100% sure if that is going to be a relevant thing for us, for the Vermont code, but there are a few of those in there. So that was 1.3 and explanatory text 1.3. Tenzin asks if we ever get requests for ebook, we can request like regular books. At this point, I don't know that we've had much, if any, success in requesting ebooks, frankly. Um, uh, sorry, let me hold on. I should have put all the links in here. Apologies. They were in the email. Let's see. I will grab. Okay, so the things we're looking at are here is the full ALA code, ALA ILL code. Um, and I'm just gonna mute people for the moment. Um, let's see. Additionally, so that was the full code. Next thing we have, which is shorter and a lot more succinct, is just the changes. Um, so I'm just muting everybody. If you need to get unmuted, just unmute yourself, please. So the things we've gotten are the ALA code, the just the summary. The summary is very short. It's just a line for each. And then let's see. I have a link. I'll just throw this in here. This is the link for the most recent version of our code. Based on that, I think I might skim a little faster than I've been doing because I think I'm digging in too deep, and this could take 3 hours this way, and I don't know that that's totally useful. So, okay, let's see. We have wrong one. Okay, so 1.3 is 1.3 was the accessibility. 3.2 um, just says it's in a section about international interlibrary loan. And it just says that international transactions are regulated by International Federation of Library and governed by copyright law or international treaties. That may be a little bit beyond what we include in our code, but that's what that one is. I feel free you know what? I think I'm just going to skim through all of them, and we will. Um, um, uh, and then we can talk because you know what? No, we'll keep doing one by one. Any thoughts on international transactions and whether that seems relevant? Um, Kelly says to the ebook point, Libby has ebooks and you can request new ones that are not in the collection yet, and they notify you when they are added. Yep, that's a good point. So that is the sort of available protocol, I think, and but the sort of more traditional ILL is a piece that it seems to be a challenge for most of us. Logan points out often when international copies are the only ones available, the cost of shipping is prohibitive. That is a great point, and I know that it happens at the state level occasionally, but not a lot. And that is certainly a good point that the cost can be sizable. So again, this is a thing that we could think about adding, but I don't think collectively we do a lot of international ILL. Okay. Section 4.4 is um, uh, yes, yes, I sent them out on the ILL list, but I can send them out again. Hold on one sec. Sorry. Sorry for the pause. Um, all right, and that'll take a second to come through. Um, 4.4 specifically adds special requirements. You know what? I'm going to summarize these so we can all talk about them together and not go into too deeply on them. Section 4.4 adds gives a list of special requirements that can be indicated by a lender, including, or actually, sorry, no, this is a requester. Um, Alternate shipping address, rush delivery, required tracking is the thing that is getting added to this required tracking. Hold on one sec. Let me get. Um, oh, sorry, not quite through yet. Um, all right, we have somebody. Mel Richmond has their hand up. Do you want? Feel free to unmute yourself.
Yeah, hey there. My name's Mel. I'm at the Richmond Free Library. Last week I wrote, I'm gonna turn my camera on. Last week I wrote, um, hi, an email on the listserv about, it's related to tracking. So I requested a book and in my Clover, it was marked as shipped, but it's coming from, I presume, out of state. It's like a small kind of informational text. And so it was marked as shipped and it never arrived. I don't know where it's shipped from. I don't have any tracking information. Now it's overdue. I'm supposed to give it back. My options are to mark it as lost. I, is it lost? Was it ever shipped? How do we, is this something that the tracking is going to address?
Let's see. Sorry, was that was that the transformed title?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
I sent you an email fielding this one, but you're good is the short version. It
Hmm.
if you don't need it anymore, which it
Yeah,
sounded like you did not. Okay,
I
so
don't
you're
need
all
it anymore.
set. It went to the wrong library. The wrong library ultimately sent it back.
Mhm.
We just canceled it in your Clover request.
Thank you so
So you
much.
should be all set on that. Which
Is
doesn't
this something that the tracking is going to address? Because it happens so far, they have always shown up, apart from this one, but is this what the tracking is, that we know where it's coming from? I would have a contact in the event that it doesn't arrive like that.
so okay, I'll try to this would balloon, but I'm gonna the short version is that in general, when you have an item out, you either if you're taking it directly from somebody else in the state, you will know that they are the library that you're getting it from. In the case where it's coming through us, we're the best resource to talk to because we'll have a handle on where it is coming from, and then we can reach out to that specific library. Tracking will only really get you covered from point A to point B in the mailings. So that can be helpful sometimes, but it won't necessarily get at, I think, what you're asking about right now. Is that
Mostly, yeah, I guess even just knowing the point A would be very helpful, if that's something that the tracking would include. Yeah, but cool.
so?
Thank you. I think my
Let me.
question's answered. Yeah,
I'll do that in a more logical way. I can send a separate email walking through
sure.
that. Um, thank you.
Yes, thanks.
Um, all right. Meg has her hand up.
I think I'm unmuted. Hi.
Hi.
I just wanted to say we talked about this a little bit at the August meeting, which was in person, so I don't think was recorded, and there was only a few of us there. So I think what we had kind of talked about on the tracking and something that other people might share is with USPS kind of phasing out those tracking labels. I think people were kind of sharing, how are they tracking? And I know that this is saying, it's being listed as an example, not necessarily a requirement, but sort of like what people are using as their threshold for when they want to be tracking. Just more to like give a little bit of context there as far as what people were thinking, and just being aware that, if someone does decide that they're going to put tracking as a requirement, like what are your steps to make that happen potentially? I know like for me, coming out of Colchester, we get a fair amount of things that would need tracking, and we didn't have a way to do it in-house that would still assure the library rate and all of that. So I was basically just like going to the post office to have them like bring me up a $0 order to give me tracking information, which was a little tedious. So like for me, I've now decided things that are going out of state, like that, now the Department of Libraries is facilitating, I always want to get tracking for that. Or if it's something like kind of rare, but I'm also sort of just like chancing it on some things that I feel like are easy to replace, and I'm just putting them in our mail and hoping that they get marked as received in Clover. But anyways, know that's a bigger conversation, but I think we had talked about it a little bit there, that people might be interested in that also. So that was it.
Awesome. Thank you for bringing that up. And that's a great reminder. I read that. I skimmed the notes and caught that, but I think sort of repeating out what people had, I can share that out at some point, and we can see what everybody else was talking about last time. But thank you. Appreciate it. All right. Michelle.
Hi, Josh.
Hi
So
there.
I guess my question is, if the Department of Libraries, Vermont Department of Libraries, has sent us an out-of-state, are you tracking it as it comes to us, and do we get that tracking number from you?
So we are, I believe, I believe if we're, so if we're predominantly, we're sending, if we can send it through the courier, it's going through the courier. And so there is
Right.
not a, but if we
Right.
are mailing something, I think we are tracking, well, I actually am now, I'm not sure that we're tracking everything. I'm not
Okay.
totally sure if our situation has changed on that front, and it could have.
So do you ever put the lending library into like the borrowing notes so that we can then have access? So let's say Boston College sent me an item. Obviously, there's 5 options to send it. Do you ever, once you get that confirmation from OCLC, do you ever put their code into the borrowing note so that we can reach directly out to them? Or is that not okay, and should we be reaching out to you?
This is a great question, and I don't actually have an answer for you.
Okay.
I apologize.
That's good. That's
yep.
fine.
Sorry. I don't know, but it's a good question.
It just might be an option for having us being able to handle our own issues rather than coming to you guys all the time. And then we'd know where we were sending it back to before we got it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Okay,
absolutely.
thanks.
Thank you. Let's see. We just had a comment, which was,
How do I mute myself?
okay, so we have a few discussions on the tracking front. Let's see. Noreen says USPS tracking for ILS shipments, if tracking numbers included, printed to the receipt. They were printed to the receipt, no extra charge. Kat says, though getting them to actually give you an answer on where things can be frustrating, particularly for USPS. That tracks with my experience as well. Noreen points out, so we have to go directly to the post office and not the town to mail our books. I think so there was a big discussion last time around, and I can share that out later about the challenges around tracking now that tracking has become less available. Let's see. Kelly posts in the past, regular USPS tracking did not add cost. I was recently sent the wrong tracking barcodes that require a signature, and they do add about $3. Okay, that's great to know. And then Meg says, basically with the tracking, it's how you're generating the postage. So we have a stamps.com, I assume, account where I'm weighing and calculating the library rate, but that does not generate tracking. So it's a free service, but it requires a trip to USPS and their employee to basically create that. Okay, awesome. That's super useful info. And so, okay, thank you everybody on those. So yeah, tracking maybe is something that we don't, again, this is all language that we get to decide whether any of it's relevant for our code, whether any of it is really, will add anything. Kat says anyone with access to the state's Iliad should be able to tell you who is lending what book and the contact info for that location. Translating that info to Clover, though, not sure if that's possible without manually copying and pasting it. I'm going to get better answers on exactly how that would work. So apologies on that. All right, so I'm going to march through the code, I think pretty briefly, because I think that's going to be more helpful and not waste people's time on me just reading off long descriptions. So let's see, we were at 4.4. 4.4 basically added under optional requirements, required tracking is one that you could put. 4.5 is another accessibility one. It says communicate requirements for a specific user's accessibility needs. It gives it as an option that can be included in when requesting something. Let's see. There's additional explanatory text on that, which just goes into more detail. Explanatory text 4.9. It's in a similar vein. It just adds that section 121, reproductions for blind or other people with disabilities, it lists it as a thing that you would be complying with because it has a slightly different list of, it's a little bit freer than some of the other copyright requirements. Explanatory text 4.10. This one is sort of interesting, and I can't remember if it's already in ours. It gives you a list of things that a receiving library should do, or can do or can't do. But it says, specifically states, libraries should not clean or repair materials without permission from the supplying library. Again, I don't know that that is one that we need, but it's a little more general than some of the other suggestions in here. Explanatory text 4.11. This is talking about if billing happens, either I think either if something is lost or if there is just a charge built into a request. It says it is the responsibility of the requesting library to review invoices for any billing errors. Sorry. As soon as the invoice is received, contact the supplying library if there are any questions, and pay any invoices within 6 months from the billing date for the charges in question. Just sort of a little bit of elaboration on that one. Sorry. Okay. 4.13. Apparently they rewrote their due date definition. Kelly, got your hand up. Please feel free to unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay. Going back to what you said about not cleaning or repairing books that are loaned to you without the permission of the loaning library.
Mm-hmm.
I was loaned a damaged book that while it was in the care of my high school student, the cover got damaged even further. And we had to buy a new book for the loaning library. And I'm wondering if there should be some information about not loaning out damaged books. Just a thought.
Yeah, no, I think that's an interesting point. There is, I think it's in our code. I think there's information about describing the damage. Now I can't remember. I'll have to refine that, but I don't think there's anything that states whether you couldn't do it or not. But that is I I think that's definitely worth a point worth discussing. About damage. Let me write that down. Books. If anybody has, let's see. I think somebody, let's see. Noreen said, I like that. Sometimes the book comes and is very fragile. And then Kat points out documenting damage before sending out is good practice, but on receiving works too. All right. Well, let's, again, I think that I've spotted it in our section, but I can't remember what the reading is. If I spot it later, I'll bring it up. But Eric says, I would argue for only describing prohibiting damage books lending then leads to a lot of consternation about what constitutes damage. Kat agreed with that. And then Noreen says she documents both ways as well. Gotcha. Well, I think this is, definitely worth thinking about how we want to finesse that, and if we want to change what we're suggesting people behavior they do. Let's see. Tenzin says, I agree on both ways. Logan says, I document if I receive a book with damage so that we won't get billed in the future. And then Tracy Brownell says, we document both ways as well. Gotcha. Well, if I... Yeah, I got to find the specific language we have. I'm not finding it immediately, I'm afraid. All right, well, that's definitely, if we don't have sufficient language going already, I think we can definitely, we could take a crack at, thank you. Okay, Michelle shared 4.10 in ours, which is exactly what we need. The requesting library is responsible for borrowed materials from the time it leaves the supplying library until it has been returned and received by the supplying library. This includes all materials shipped directly to and/or returned by the user. If damage or loss occurs, requesting library is responsible for compensation or replacement in a timely manner and in accordance with the preference of the supplying library. Requested library is responsible for any agreed upon supplying library fees. Thank you, Michelle. I thought there was language about specifically reporting damage ahead of time, but I may be reading that maybe in the ALA one and not in ours. So if I find something about now, it would have been responsibilities of supplying library. Sorry, I'm just skimming this. Confidentiality fees. That due date. Efficient manner. All right, I skimmed super quick, but I didn't see anything about a requirement of, in the Vermont code about a requirement to acknowledge damage. I might have missed it. I went real fast, so it's possible it's already in there. Let's see if I can just pull up the code and try to search for damage. Okay, let's see. Damage or loss occurs. To prevent damage and shipping. Okay. Yeah, we may not have anything in there right now. So if we don't, that could be something that we might want to field. Let's see. And Kelly, you have your hand up. Is this the old, or do you have a new thing to bring up?
That's the old one. I don't know how to make it go.
I can fix that. And then Michelle, you have your hand up.
Yeah, so you can always, if you receive a damaged item, the best thing to do is to mark it and not receive it, and so that they know that it's damaged and it's not going to go out to your patron. Especially if you have more than one person doing ILL, just reach out to the others. I think the standard is to reach out, report the damage, and just, if it was damaged in shipping, or because you don't know if it was damaged in shipping or if it was damaged and they know it's damaged. So it's always best just to reach out and say, hey, we got this book. It looks like it's damaged. What would you like us to do? We agree to send it back immediately. And that way they know your patron didn't damage it. That's
Thank
just
you. Yeah.
standard.
That sounds like a great approach as your in your initial steps. So I like that. And thank you. And we can think about whether we want to add language about recording damage before items are sent, even if that's or as they are sent. I don't know. Can think about whether we want more language in there. But all right, let's see. That was okay. So I was talking about, and again, feel free to jump in at any point and we can talk about even if there's something that we did before. Explanatory text 4.13, they just condensed their due date definition. So I don't know that one's going to impact us because it's just a language change. 4.17 says, failure to comply with the provisions of this code may result in suspension of service by a supplying library until resolved. Let me see what the rest of the language around that piece is. I think it's just saying that if you're not meeting, yes, basically, if you're not following the ILL code, that you can be suspended from service by a supplying library. And I don't know that that's necessarily something we want to add, but that's that. Let's see. Gotcha. Yes, Kelly pointed out the book I was talking about was an old book that, in my opinion, should not have been loaned out. It was not damaged in transit. And that's a great point. And that could be something that we want. Yes, I think that's something that we could think about, whether language about what condition, or at least heads upping people beforehand that you're sending a book that is in pieces or what have you. Okay, let's see. 4.17, that was suspension of service. 5.1 says the supplying library is strongly encouraged to fill requests from all types of libraries whenever possible with a mindset towards facilitating equitable access. I don't know if that's a big issue here, but I guess that means school libraries, special libraries, etc. Or maybe it means that they're talking about sort of the academic public divide. In any case, that's something we can think about. Text 5.3. A supplying library should not charge a renewal fee. This is in cases where there are charges with borrowing an item. So a supplying library should not charge a renewal fee while the item is, let's see, to renew an item that is still on loan to the requesting library and the user, but a supplying library may charge a service fee to lend, again, a physical item previously borrowed and returned. Okay, so that's basically saying that you shouldn't charge a fee to renew, but you can charge a fee to lend again. Again, not a huge issue in Vermont, and that there's not a lot of pay lending that's happening. Okay. 5.4. As open access materials become more prevalent, a request citation may match an item that can be found in an institutional repository or on social media. In these cases, supplying libraries should consult with the requesting library before supplying an unpublished version of the copy. That might be a little granular for the state of Vermont, but it's just sort of giving, I guess, clarity around open documents. 5.5 says, be aware that as authorized entities, libraries have the right to reproduce copyrighted materials in accessible formats. This is another accessible formats question for the exclusive individual use of eligible persons with disabilities. 5.5, similarly, requesting libraries may be using interlibrary loan to meet an accessibility need. Section 5.6, process requests accurately and in a timely manner, recognizing the need of the requesting library and/or the requirements of the resource sharing system being used. If unable to fill a request, respond promptly and state the reason the request cannot be filled. I'm not sure if these are things that we would necessarily need to add. I feel like they're kind of already baked into various aspects of our code. But if you feel otherwise, we could certainly have a conversation about that or what have you. Explanatory 5.6 just says pay attention to bibliographic fields and notes in terms of edition, format, volume, and year to ensure that it's the correct material. 5.8 says secure agreement, for example, via conditional message from the requesting library for any usage and shipping restrictions. That one is just, let me just find it, 5.8. I think it is, yes, if there's any restrictions by the lending library, it's sort of just clarifying those a little bit. 5.9, the delivery location may be different from the requesting library or consortial resource sharing service. Take all appropriate steps to deliver the item to the specified location, such as an affiliated library or the user's home address. And you can also specify the shipping method as well as in any insurance or tracking requirements. This again goes to the optional requirements pieces and is just sort of adding some other ones. 5.10, renewing an item when possible is preferred to mandating the item's return and having it re-requested, since a second loan curtails the user's time with the item, creates additional staff work and potential damage for the item. 5.12, let's see, deliver copies electronically wherever possible. This is mostly for articles and the like. Provide complete and legible copies, and then this is the addition, and adhere to any special scanning or accessibility instructions of the requesting library. So again, another batch of accessibility language. And then, last but not least, also in 5.12, supplying library should provide a copy that closely reproduces the original article or chapter in appearance, legibility, and completeness, with a special look to supplementary materials is an item that they're adding. And then also, the supplying library should strive to evaluate the requested conditions and communicate back to the requesting library indicating which conditions can be met rather than canceling if all the conditions cannot be met. Okay, so that is the end of the changes. Some of the I mean, we can discuss any of the changes, and we also don't need to discuss them today. We can discuss them in the future. In many cases, the changes, I think, are fairly granular and possibly are more granular than our ILL code, the Vermont ILL code, is written in. And then some of them are elaborations on semi-common sense, to my mind. Again, and this is in my reading, but you all are out there working on this, and you may say, no, we 100% need that, in which case that's a conversation we totally need to have. Any other thoughts on the ones that any other thoughts right now on the things that we have? Let's see, I think I have at least one chat that, oh yeah, Meg points out, I think it's implied more than explicit in our code, but RE 5.6, please do read the messages from requesters. Often I have a specific due date request note for a book club that's completely ignored, and I bet if you don't want to supply it that long, but if you're fulfilling, please make the adjustment. That's a good point in general, though, I think. I mean, and that covers maybe a lot of ground. You are reading the messages. I think that is indicated in our current code, but it could be something that we could think about, address, emphasize. And Kat says, and those notes are a great way to communicate unusual requests such as formatting, scan quality, edition details, etc. Yeah, and I think this is something that we could definitely elaborate on. Let's see. I'm just trying to find the closest language we have. Okay, it says the supplying library is, this is 5.3 in Vermont. It says the supplying library is required to check its automated system for ILL messages according to the mandates of the system provider, e.g. CLOVER, and respond promptly. When requested material cannot be sent, all supplying libraries should notify the requesting library promptly, and if possible, state the reason a request cannot be sent. Fees. I'm not seeing any additional language that says that really um, zeroes in on what you're saying, sort of the requiring or reminding everyone that they should be looking at um, the messages from requesters. It's sort of like kind of a little bit baked in, but it certainly isn't explicit. Tenton says it happens sometimes from out of state. Also, we have received incorrect materials. For example, we need audiobook, but received book instead. Yes, unfortunately, I think that does occur sometimes. Probably occasionally on our end, and probably more frequently as we request through OCLC, and something is either lost in translation, so to speak, or is ignored. But I think, and unfortunately, we only have so much control over what the out-of-state folks do when it's not in our part. But it's definitely it's something we're thinking about. And it's also and along the same lines, we're thinking about whether we want to highlight it a little bit more on or in-state for people who are going to be following the code. Um, let's see. All right. Okay. So, yes, Kat says, I'd say 50% ignored and 50% the wonkiness of translating from Clover systems to other out-of-state systems. And then she says it does take some sleuthing to pick up on those details, if not in the notes. Yes, I can definitely imagine that. So that's something that we may want to expand the way we're describing that in the code. And that's not something we need to necessarily take on today, but it's something that we can continue to talk about both offline and in future roundtables. So any other thoughts on the changes to the ALA National ILL code? And everybody, oh, you know what? I'm sorry that I don't think I ever actually allowed that last message through, so nobody probably actually saw it. Apologies. Okay. Well, now that it's not terribly useful, I have just resent it back out on the ILL. Um, uh, yes. Kat says, nice to see those accessibility updates. Yes, and that's definitely, there are a number of them, and it's possible that that has some ramifications for our code. That's something that we want to take on in some capacity. Um, I, they're a bit granular in that they are often pointing at the laws around the copyright that are sort of relaxed if you're doing it for accessibility, but there definitely may be things in there that we want for us. Um, Gotcha. Yeah, so Ruth says, I am coming in and out of the conversation and missing some things, and I'm a solo librarian who does it all. I I know how that I know how that goes, and that is a lot. So we appreciate all that you're doing and every moment that you can spare for things like this. So a lot to learn. I didn't even know about these standards, so I'm making progress. One random thing that seems like it would be super helpful is if the address for where to return the out-of-state ILLs was in the Clover record would be helpful. Sometimes it's not with the book. That is definitely something that we can look into. I don't know. I don't know, but it's something that we can certainly explore. Let me write that down. Okay, let's see. Return address for item state and close. Thanks, Ruth. That's great. I appreciate doing that. Noreen says, I always make sure to keep the packing for out-of-state items in case there is no return address on the inside. And then Jen says, agreed. I mostly see this address struggle when requesting from colleges in Clover. All good points. So yeah, we'll see, but also on the, but it's also on Bookstraps. I'll see if there's anything we can do if there's any flexibility on expanding where things end up. Also, always, if you're getting, if you get stuck on something, and it's not uh, coming up easily, please feel free to reach out to us. We may have contacts for finding an answer. Let's see. Okay, Tracy from Brownell says we keep the packing as well with a tag indicating which book the packing is associated with. Kelly says, in a perfect world, there would be a return label in the book or package. Yes, agreed on that. And then Kat says, the college has access to OCLC address databases, so if you need a quick lookup, we can probably help in a pinch. Thank you, Kat. That is great. Yes, so it's definitely feel free. I mean, this is kind of covers a lot of ground, but if you're ever stuck on things, feel free to ask us, ask listserv, ask Kat. And we'll see if we can get an answer for you. But so ideally, you don't get too trapped too long in something like that. All right. So I think what my inclination is to sort of consider this a first reading of the changes to the ILL code. Let people sort of distill for next time around. And then I think at the next session, we can have sort of something more grounded about whether there are things, and this discussion can also happen in between. It could be on the listserv. But if there are things that we just talked about in there that we saw, that we like, that we think would be relevant, I wrote down a few that came up or that something related to what they have came up. We can also talk about that as we go forward. So, okay. Let's see. I think now is the part when unless there's anything else on that or any of the things that if anybody wants to elaborate on any of the ones that we sort of highlighted as possible additions, the ones, let's see, do, do, do. Yes, discussion of condition maybe being in our code, and then possibly adding something sort of mandating that you have to look for the requirement to make sure that you were catching them, are the ones that I think jumped out that were not necessarily in the ALA one, but are things that seem like they're related to that and are relevant. But if there's anything else that you want to be like, it is very, that you feel strongly about, please feel free to shout that out. And otherwise, I think we're going to segue into the open portion of the meeting where people can just bring up whatever they want to talk about ILL related. And we can discuss it, talk about, our experiences or thoughts we might have on it, if there's things that we would like to work on. Yeah. So first off, we have Kelly. Please feel free to unmute yourself. Oh, I think you're still muted. Sorry.
Hi.
Hi
Would
there.
it be possible for Clover to provide tracking? And then the libraries that don't have access to the post office, since we're all responsible for making sure that the books get to where they're going, and then we want to make sure the books are safe, could Clover help us create that tracking?
Well, so the challenge, do you mean it's sort of while they're being mailed or sort of, I think the issue is that while they're being mailed, they're only going to get scanned if the it boop, 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 boops if the post office wants to. And I don't think I mean, it's worth thinking about. But my guess is it's going to be, you know what? I mean, it can't hurt to ask. I don't know why
If Clover would
just
get
do
us
it.
tracking, if Clover would get us if you would get us tracking labels, then everyone could put them on our packages. And I believe that they could even be reused. since I just was sent the wrong tracking labels, I'm just recycling ones I already have. So it doesn't have to be a crazy expensive thing, just a thought.
Thank you. I mean, I think that as things go, it certainly could be a kind of value added service that Clover might provide since it's becoming more challenging. Um, like I said, it can't hurt to ask. So thank you for the suggestion.
Thank you.
All right. This is general discussion time. So other ILL thoughts, things that people want to know or want to see as problems, or Tenton asks, and thank you, Tenton. Sorry, I haven't gotten back to you on this email. You asked about this. Tenton asked, in a recent update in Clover, did they change the font size in printing shipping paperwork? Have other people seen that as a thing? Um, has anybody else noticed a change in font size? I unfortunately am not working with that often, and so I don't have a firsthand. Yes, I noticed that too. Yes, when I print. Okay. All right. So sounds like it's a thing. Um, let's see. All right. Well, I can reach out to Autographics and see if they um duh, 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 see if there's something that they can do or a change that we could make on our end. But again, Tenzin, thanks for bringing that up, and sorry that I didn't get back to you more rapidly on it. So let me just write this down or I will forget. Um, shipping, paperwork, smaller font. Okay, let's see. And Noreen asked if those are the labels for the courier. I think that yeah, for the mailing. Um, do you mean the book straps or the other? As somebody who doesn't do this on a regular basis, I'm um, Kat's suggestion for folks to try was to shipping labels for mailing. Thank you. Was to try uh, print shipping label paperwork. Okay. Thank you. Kat's suggestion, sorry, was to try changing printer settings, blow things up to 200% in the meantime, and see if that works. Um, and then Jen clarified the print shipping label paperwork. Noreen said, I didn't know we could print shipping labels. So certainly a lot of, in the last update, a number of things, as you know, in Clover and in Verso changed. So it's possible it just kind of fell into something else. But we can definitely see if that's something that they can remedy or if there is a fix on our end that we could work on. Let's see. And Springfield has her hand up. Springfield, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
You can hear me now?
Yes. Yep. Absolutely.
Okay. I gotta go in just a moment or so because I've got to relieve somebody on the reference desk. But just letting people know that since we lend out and borrow a lot of stuff, we've got a scheduling issue. Basically, I was taking off the last 2 weeks of this month, and then the other person who does our ILLs is also taking a medical leave during that time. So for the last 2 weeks of the month, basically, I put in our patron or in our participant record on Clover that we're not available, and also anything that gets returned will get processed in early December, so there may be some overdues and things on our part, but we'll try and get that cleared up as quickly as possible. for those libraries that are within Catamount, the Catamount transfers will continue as normal, but it's just the Clover ILL items that are affected.
Gotcha. Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thanks for that is super good to know. And thanks for putting in the participant record, of course. That's super useful if everybody keeps that as up to date as possible. And puts heads up for things like that. Other, let's see. I think I might have had something else in the chat. Noreen asked, where can I find out how to do this? Kat said it's under the ILL admin menu. Click print shipping labels. And then Noreen said, thank you. So that's great. Thank you, Kat. And thanks for asking, Noreen. Other questions, or not questions, statements, things you like to discuss in the ILL world? Michelle, please just unmute yourself. Oh, I think you are still muted, Michelle. Should be.
I'm good.
You're good. Awesome.
Okay.
All right. Anyone? Oh, no in chat above. Thank you. So that is that. Oh, okay. It won't unmute. Let me just double check you. Okay. Sorry. All right. Okay. So ideally, okay. Let's see. Yeah, if you want to throw that into the chat. Sorry that we can't get you unmuted. Michelle's looking for a book that has not made it to FML. Fletcher, sorry. The book is The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. It was to be returned to Fletcher Memorial from Vermont State Libraries, but it has not found its way. If anybody spots that, oh, gotcha. It also has documents in it from the patron, and they need them, so that's why they're extra interested in locating it. Logan also added South Burlington is looking for a copy a book that was intended to go there but has not made it. The Green Mile by Stephen King. So if anybody spots either of those floating around, please put them on their way to where they should go and reach out to Michelle and Logan, respectively. Let's see. Yes, so Kelly asked, should we put these missing books on the listserv? It's generally not a bad approach to put on the ILL or courier listservs as are appropriate when books do not come where they should be. Doesn't always help, but it does get word out there to folks that they are out there in case anybody spots them randomly. And if anybody is not on the ILL listserv, please feel free to ask me and I can add you. Or same thing for Courier. Or if any of your co-workers would like to be on those lists and are not right now, please let me know. And if you're in general, if you ever have questions about listservs, I'm a good place to talk about it. Let's see. Tenzin said we usually get a lot of your books at Fletcher free, as somewhat unsurprisingly, but I always send it back to you right away. Sorry it's missing. Michelle clarified, yes, we did. Just thought I would take advantage of having y'all's attention. I think that's a great strategy, both to you and Logan. Other things that people want to discuss on the in terms of IL? I will again repeat in case anybody came in a little bit later. And April Shaw has left the department, unfortunately, and is working in a different department in the state. So we're all sort of uh, trying our best to keep up with all of the various things that she kept running here. And so you can reach out to um, me or the lib.contact@vermont.gov address anytime that you have a question that involves ILLs or really anything else April did, and we'll all just try to keep up. So that's one piece. The second piece is that we have just, you know what, I'm going to actually put this in the chat. Oops. Once the chat sees fit to catch up. Here is a link. We have just recently posted the job listing for her position. It is so it just went live a few days ago. It is closing on November 19th. So if you or anyone you know is potentially interested in the in that position, please pass it out in the world. We would love to get as many applicants as possible. Um, and if you have specific questions about the position, I can't answer them, but you can reach out to the department and we can make sure that the correct person is. They are listed and they should be listed in the job listing, but you can always reach out to one of us and we can point you to the right person who will have answers. So that's going on. Kat says it's been great to see more request numbers included on Clover books we borrow from y'all. Thank you for that. That is cool. That is request numbers. And let's see. Upcoming. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not sure what else we have going on that is super relevant. Does anybody else have anything that they want to jump into or bring up? I will add that we're recording this, so we will hopefully get it online in relatively short order, and then we will get notes based on that out probably a couple days after that. That will go out to everybody on the list. Oh, thank you. Kat points out you can request PDFs of articles and book chapter scans. That is a service ILL provides. That's a good reminder. Thank you much. And that's something that the state can also help with if you're in need of something like that. We can always take a crack at it. Any other things you'd like to talk about? All right, like I said, we'll send this out. I'll resend info on the ILL codes, and we can either have a discussion kind of going about whether any of these things need to get added, or we can just bring it up next in a next quarter when we have our next roundtable. And otherwise, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate everybody, and thanks for putting up with me sort of meandering through how this might work. And yeah, I hope everyone has as good a rest of your week as you all can. And thanks so much for all the work that you all do day in and day out. We really appreciate it. All right, I'm going to stop the recording.